one of the things that I do every year is stop collecting grass clippings as fall approaches. And when I mow, I just make sure that the clippings drop right onto the lawn, hopefully to help build up some of the fertility I've been taking from the lawn so that next year I can have healthy lawn for grass clippings. But we're not at that point yet. Some of the final clippings that I am going to collect, I'm going to use to mulch some of the areas that have become a little bit weedy. This little blueberry plot, blueberry and strawberry, and there's a couple apple trees in here. I'm going to take these grass clippings and get to work on some of that. How'd you get? Good boy. These strawberry plants are looking really nice, and that makes me happy. One of the first things I planted in the garden when we moved here 3 years ago was strawberries. I bought 2 varieties from Fedco Trees, 100 plants in all. The second year, they produced a modest crop, and I was pretty psyched. Unfortunately, the plants, which had spread to make an impressive carpet, were planted on the edge of the bowl as part of my reclamation project. At the end of last year, the creeping vine that runs rampant throughout my property took over while I wasn't looking. By the time I went and checked in on the strawberry patch, it was completely overrun. A total loss. It was a big disappointment. Fortunately, the previous spring, I had tried an experiment and dug up some of the outlying suckers, planting them in window boxes on the deck. In the fall, I put them under the deck and forgot about them as I was scurrying about to get ready for snow. Then, this spring, they actually came back, even though they had sat in window boxes in a pile under the snow all winter. So, I grabbed those 20 or so plants and put them in this plot. I'm very excited that they're looking this good. Alright, it's definitely that time of year when I have to start worrying about voles. What they do is essentially come around and take little nibbles out of things, particularly root crops. So I've got a bunch of carrots over here, and I pulled some the other night, and I've got my first sign of damage. So what I've done is taken a page out of Elliot Coleman's books and made these little vole traps. And essentially what they are is I just have these snap traps, and I have these boxes. I've been storing these outside. Now that I have the storage shed, I can keep them inside more and protect them and keep them longer. But one of the things that's always a little bit exciting is opening them, because you find hornets' nests. I've already checked all these out, so this video isn't going to be as entertaining as it could be. But at any rate, these boxes, which I made a number of years ago, just have these little holes in them. And voles have a natural tendency to just, when they're frightened, or they have a predator coming after them, or they see a shadow, they scurry and they go into any dark hole. So what you do is, you don't even need to bait these traps. You just take your snap traps and set them and put them right in front of the hole, so that when the vole comes in, it automatically gets snapped. I've got them on both sides, so no matter which direction the vole comes in, it will no longer be a problem. Then you just cover them over and put them in the garden in strategic places. They work really well in greenhouses in the winter because you can actually see where the animals are coming in underneath the foundation. It's a little bit more challenging here, but after a while you get to learn where they use for avenues. So I'm going to go set these now. I mentioned when I started working on this project that it's easier to use these vole traps in a hoop house because you can see where they're coming in. Rodents tend to scurry along edges, along walls. They don't tend to go more than a foot out from a wall or a tree or some kind of cover if they can help it. So you can actually see there's a pathway in here. You'll recognize these just walking by. It'll catch your attention. They're so frustrating. So I put this right up against the foundation, right next to where the voles come out. And now the trick is just going to be come in and check it every once in a while. So it's important when you set these not to just set them down and call that good. You want these to basically be set up in a way that the voles are going to be able to access the holes where the traps are. So this is no good right now because they'll just scurry underneath or go around. So what you want to do is make sure you've set it up in a way that they're going to be able to go in. Same thing here. If I'd had this set up just like this hole right here is not the place where they're going to run into. They're just going to run along and go underneath to protect themselves. So you have to make sure that you've given them easy access to this hole, so that's where they're going to go. So basically what I'm doing here is coming along and making it so I can mow in here again. I tend to let the squash and pumpkin and any vining plants do what they're going to do as long as possible. But now that the squash vines have started to die back and I can see that there are some mature, really good looking squashes in here, there's no real need to continue to allow these vines to spread out into the walking paths. They're already starting to die back and they're putting energy into reaching further and further when they could be putting more energy into the squash. So what I'm going to do is come along and trim anywhere where they're reaching out into the walking path so that I can come in here and mow and have more easy access along this boundary. I'm going to do the same thing along the fence line over here. The leaves, what they're doing is basically acting as big photovoltaic panels to the sun. So there's definitely a trade-off. I'm essentially taking out surface area that they could be gathering chlorophyll, but it's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. There's still plenty of growth in here in the actual squash plot. I'm always trying to balance the way the garden looks with the way I'm able to produce, the amount I'm able to produce. And right now I'm willing to trade this production value to have the garden look nice and the ability to move in and out and access all areas of the garden that I need to access. As is true with tomato and cucumber suckers, you want to prune squash and pumpkin vines at the nodes, or the point just after a leaf branches out from the main stem. So here's a situation where I have to kind of break my rule about cutting this out. This is stretching all the way across from the squash over there and starting to reach over into the carrots, and actually it's touching up against the electric fence I put in to protect the corn. So I definitely need to take care of this, but I have a nice butternut squash right here that is going to mature and produce a good squash. I don't want to just waste that. So what I'm going to do, instead of cutting this, is carefully pull it out of the grass and train it back over onto the squash patch. When you do something like that, you need to be careful to support your squash right where it comes off the vine. This is really heavy. This probably already weighs about 3 pounds. So it's really important not to just pick up the vine, because this will just break off and then you've just wasted all the effort that you were trying to put into saving it. You have to be very gentle because these little tendrils are actually wrapped around grass and caught onto things, so you have to pull really gently. There's another one. So this is a productive vine, little tiny one. The other nice thing about doing this task in the late summer, early fall, is that you get to see all the cool stuff that's been happening while you were away. Winter squash is kind of a set it and forget it type crop. You plant it, weed it or mulch it in my case, and then you just leave it alone and it goes crazy. And you can't see what's happening under this thick blanket of leaves, this carpet. And then when it starts to die back and I'm pruning, I get to see all this awesome squash that's growing. I'm gonna pile this up and then we can take a look. I always love this time of year. I know I say that a lot, but you get to see all this cool stuff the garden's been producing. This is a sunshine squash. This is a Marina di Chioggia. It's a, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's how I've always pronounced it in my head. It's an Italian variety. Over there, that is Australian butter, which is one of my favorite squashes. There's a whole bunch of them over there. There's one. This is a bonbon. It's a buttercup style. Oh, look at that. That's a beauty. That's a butternut. Look at this Australian butter. Ooh, that's a ginormous one. Man, the stem's already looking like it's gonna get corky, so that's how you know when they're ready on the vine. That's a beauty. Pretty excited about that. Some more bonbons in there. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up when all the vines die back and I can access it and get harvesting, but right now it's looking pretty promising.